the OCC put out a publication about reducing regulatory burden for community banks. And this is just the OCC's version. I imagine that we're going to see FDIC information come out, NCUA and Fed eventually. It's all within the framework that the administration and the president is trying to do in lessening the burden on financial institutions. Now, they can't change laws through executive orders. They can't change laws through bulletins. But they can change what happens the next time they come into your bank and how they go about their examination. So let me run through some bullet points here. So there was actually, I think, 4 or 5 different bulletins with respect to this burden one that came out earlier this week. And one of them had to do with how they're going to go about that next examination. What they said is they're going to do less transaction testing and more risk-based. Now, we've been hearing that for years, that these are risk-based examinations. But like, for example, the OCC had a requirement that they do actual transaction testing for flood insurance. What this new framework says is they don't necessarily have to do that unless they see that there's a risk, okay, that is elevated. They may not do transaction testing for flood insurance. They may not pick your loans. Same thing with fair lending. They don't necessarily have to do a risk assessment if they don't think the risk is there, where they were required to do that in their past. And those are just a couple of the examples. Here would be my takeaway. Okay, be careful how you read this. This is policy framework for the regulator for the next 3 years at a minimum. Okay, why 3 years? Well, there's going to be a new election, and depending on what happens in that election, that will tell us what's going to happen with the next 4 years that follow, right? And just because your examiner is not going to do certain things doesn't mean that there isn't still civil liability risk and other risks there as well. So be careful how you read that. I wouldn't take your foot off the gas pedal at all. Just know that your next exam may not be as deep when it comes to some of the transaction testing. They also put out a thing about retail non-deposit investment products. Basically, in plain English, what it's saying is they're throwing out the exam manual, not going to use it anymore, but all of you still have to comply with all the laws. And if we see something, we're going to say something. That's the gist of it. So it's not like a free ride there. It's that they're just not going to examine for it based on the old examination manual. There was a thing about model risk management, and it has to do with all the different models everybody's using these days. And so you probably have a model that you rely on for AML monitoring, maybe for credit approvals, things like that. What this gets down to is there's no set frequency that you need to do model validation. In other words, ensuring that your model is working as you expect it to. You need to do it within a reasonable time frame, and that's up to you, risk-based again. So as long as it's deemed to be reasonable, you pass. It doesn't necessarily need to be annually, is the example that they gave. Maybe it's every 12 to 18 months based on the risk you perceive to your organization. If, again, it's reasonable, you're going to probably get a pass. And then the one that I've been asked the most about is the one that's going to affect the least. And that is the OCC is looking to rescind their fair housing law requirement. Now, who does that really affect? It's OCC banks with 50 applications or less per year that are not HMDA. So this is something they should do away with. It's redundant. They proposed it. I think that it's going to go through without any issue. And so we'll see the OCC fair housing law requirement go away. So if that was you likely in the future will no longer have to do that.